At 17 years old, Hayley Mills finally decided to speak openly about her past, about fame, family, love, and the people who shaped her. Among those, one name still carried a special weight in her heart: Maureen O'Hara. But to understand what she meant, you have to go back to where it all began, to a small, lively house in post-war London, where art, laughter, and storytelling filled the air. Hayley Catherine Rose Vivian Mills was born on April 18, 1946, into one of Britain's most respected theatrical dynasties. Her father, Sir John Mills, was already a celebrated name, known for his magnetic performances in films like Great Expectations and Ryan's Daughter. Her mother, Mary Hayley Bell, was a gifted playwright and novelist whose imagination and sensitivity influenced her daughter as deeply as any acting lesson could. Growing up in that household meant that art wasn't something you did, it was something you breathed. Their home was full of scripts, costumes, and conversations about film and theater. Hayley watched her father transform himself from one character to another, and saw her mother create whole worlds out of words. It wasn't long before Hayley's own creative spark began to show. She was a curious, expressive child with bright eyes, a mischievous smile, and an ability to observe people in a way far beyond her years. Her parents encouraged her curiosity but never pushed her into acting. Yet the stage seemed to call her naturally, and by the time she turned 12, destiny had already begun to unfold. Her first screen appearance came in 1959, in the British film Tiger Bay, a crime drama that placed her alongside her father. Despite her young age, she carried a quiet power in her performance, emotional depth wrapped in innocence, and a natural ability to connect with audiences. Critics praised her immediately, noting that she didn't just act, she was the character. There was truth in every expression, a rare authenticity that made her unforgettable. That performance caught the eye of a man who would change her life forever: Walt Disney himself. Disney saw something extraordinary in Hayley. She had the radiant purity that defined his vision of childhood, full of hope, resilience, and imagination. But she also had something deeper, a quiet intelligence that made her more than just another young performer. He knew she was special. Within months, she was offered a contract with Walt Disney Studios, setting the stage for one of the most successful collaborations in cinema history, her first Disney film. Pollyanna, 1960, catapulted her into global fame. As the endlessly optimistic orphan who believed in finding goodness everywhere, Hayley brought light and sincerity to the role. Her smile became iconic, her eyes a mirror of kindness. She won the Academy Juvenile Award, one of the youngest ever to receive it, and audiences around the world fell in love with her. But beyond the accolades, Pollyanna gave Hayley something more lasting: the joy of knowing she could make people feel something real. She wasn't just entertaining them, she was touching hearts. Success followed success. In 1961, she starred in The Parent Trap, playing identical twins separated at birth who reunite at summer camp. It was a groundbreaking role for its time, one young actress portraying two distinct personalities, with perfect timing, charm, and emotional range. The technology used to create the twin illusion was cutting edge, but it was Hayley's performance that made it believable. She infused Susan and Sharon with individuality, humor, and warmth. The film became a classic, and to this day, generations still remember her mischievous smile, her laughter, and the way she made two fictional sisters feel like real people. Through the early 1960s, Hayley Mills became the golden face of Disney. Films like In Search of the Castaways, 1962, Summer Magic, 1963, and That Darn Cat, 1965 solidified her status as the studio's brightest young star. She was adored by fans, respected by peers, and trusted by Walt Disney himself. Yet, behind the curtain of stardom, she was growing up. Fame, as she would later say, has its own kind of loneliness. People wanted her to remain the cheerful girl they saw on screen. But inside, she was beginning to change, to think, to question, to seek her own truth beyond the studio's image of her. By the mid-1960s, Hayley was determined to break away from her child star identity. Her chance came with The Family Way, 1966, a British drama directed by Roy Bolton, a man who would soon become central to her life in more ways than one. She was just 20 years old when she met him. Roy was 53, a highly respected director known for his intelligence, confidence, and sharp wit. Their connection was immediate but unexpected. For Hayley, he represented a new world, adult, intellectual, and complex. For Roy, she was a rare mix of innocence and maturity, someone unafraid to think for herself. Their relationship quickly drew public scrutiny. The 33-year age gap shocked many, especially since Hayley was still remembered by millions as Disney's sweet, wide-eyed Pollyanna. The British tabloids followed them relentlessly, turning their love story into controversy. But Hayley didn't care. For the first time, she was living on her own terms, free from the image others had built around her. She often said that Roy encouraged her to think deeper, to explore film as art, and to find her own voice as a woman and actress in 1971. At 25, she married Roy Bolton, who was 58. Together, they created a life that blended creativity with comfort. They owned a stylish flat in London's Chelsea district, a hub for artists and writers, and a countryside retreat in Buckinghamshire, at a picturesque cobblestone windmill that overlooked rolling hills. The windmill became a symbol of their life together, a peaceful refuge where they entertained friends, talked for hours about cinema and literature, and found moments of calm away from the spotlight. But as time went on, their differences, the years between them, the pressures of fame, and the changing rhythms of their lives began to show. Hayley's spirit was still youthful, full of adventure and possibility, while Roy's was quieter, more settled. Their marriage, though filled with affection and creativity, began to fray. After several years of trying to hold it together, they divorced in 1977. It was a painful separation, but Hayley never spoke bitterly about it. She often said it was a chapter she needed to live, one that helped her understand herself as an adult woman. No longer a child actress trying to meet expectations, but a person defining her own boundaries. During their time together, they had a son, Crispian Mills, like his mother and grandfather. He carried the artistic gene, though his passion took him in a different direction. In the 1990s, Crispian rose to fame as the frontman of the British band Kula Shaker, known for their blend of psychedelic rock and Indian musical influences. Hayley watched his rise with pride and empathy, knowing well the pressures of fame and the challenge of being defined by public image. In interviews, she often spoke of how deeply she respected his creativity, and how, despite everything, family remained the grounding force in her life, even as her career evolved. Hayley's connection to her Disney roots never truly faded. She would later say that working with Walt Disney had been one of the greatest gifts of her life. He treated her not as a child, but as an artist, encouraging her, protecting her, and reminding her that kindness mattered as much as talent. When she received the Disney Legends Award in 2000, decades after Pollyanna, she stood on that stage not as the young girl who had once charmed the world, but as a woman who had endured, grown, and found her peace. Off-screen, she used her voice to advocate for the well-being of child performers. She spoke candidly about the pressures of early fame, the confusion of growing up in the public eye, and the importance of maintaining a sense of self. She understood the delicate balance between admiration and exploitation, and she wanted to help the next generation of young actors navigate it safely in her later years. Hayley Mills often reflected on her friendships in Hollywood, and one of the most special names that always came up was Maureen O'Hara. The two women, though from different generations, shared a bond rooted in mutual respect and resilience. Maureen had been one of the few older actresses who treated Hayley not as a child, but as an equal. She taught her lessons about strength, independence, and dignity, lessons Hayley carried for the rest of her life. When she finally spoke openly about Maureen O'Hara, she described her as a woman of fire and grace, who never bent for anyone. Now, at 79, Hayley Mills looks back on her journey with gratitude rather than regret. She has lived through eras of change, from black and white cinema to digital streaming, from innocent girlhood to reflective maturity. Through triumphs, heartbreaks, and reinvention, she remained herself, kind, grounded, and quietly defiant. When people ask her what keeps her going, she smiles and says it's love for her family, her craft, and the simple joys of living. She still believes in hope, just like Pollyanna did. She believes in second chances, in growth, and in the beauty of telling the truth after years of silence. And when she speaks about Maureen O'Hara or her parents, her eyes still shine with the same light that first caught Walt Disney's attention all those years ago, a light that has never dimmed, only deepened with time. At 79 years old, Hayley Mills finally decided to share the truth about her time with the legendary Maureen O'Hara, a woman she once admired from afar and later came to know intimately on one of Disney's most iconic sets. The story she tells now is not one of rivalry or distance, but one of mutual respect, quiet mentorship, and the kind of bond that only forms between two artists who truly understand the price of their craft. Hayley Mills had already lived a life steeped in artistry before she ever met Maureen. Born Hayley Catherine Rose Vivian Mills on April 18, 1946. In London, she was the daughter of two of Britain's most distinguished theatrical figures. Her father, Sir John Mills, was one of the great English actors, remembered for his moving performances in Great Expectations and Ryan's Daughter. Her mother, Mary Hayley Bell, was a gifted playwright and novelist, a woman with an imagination that matched her husband's talent. Growing up in such a world meant that art wasn't just a profession, it was the air Hayley breathed. Her home was filled with books, music, and conversation. She often recalled how, as a child, she would sit quietly in a corner of the living room, listening as her parents and their friends discussed the latest play or film project, their voices full of passion and creativity. It was there, in that warm but disciplined household, that her understanding of performance began to form. Acting wasn't a game to the Mills family. It was a responsibility, a calling. And when Hayley stepped in front of a camera for the first time at age 12, she already carried the weight of that legacy with her. Her debut came in Tiger Bay, 1959, a gripping British crime drama in which she appeared alongside her father. Though it was her first film, her natural ease in front of the camera astonished critics and audiences alike. There was nothing forced about her performance, no exaggerated gestures or overacting that often plagued young stars. She seemed genuine, instinctive, and deeply human. It was this raw honesty that caught the attention of one of cinema's great visionaries. Walt Disney saw in Hayley something magical, a rare mix of innocence and intelligence. She became the perfect embodiment of the wholesome, spirited youth that defined his films. Within a year, she signed a contract with Walt Disney Studios, and her first film under his banner, Pollyanna, 1960, would change her life forever. Playing the bright, ever-hopeful orphan who saw the good in everyone, Hayley delivered a performance that radiated warmth and optimism. She won the Academy Juvenile Award for it, becoming one of the youngest performers ever honored by the Oscars. To this day, Pollyanna remains one of Disney's most beloved classics, largely because of the sincerity she brought to the role. But it was her next film that would seal her place in cinema. History, The Parent Trap, 1961. Here, she played not one but two characters, identical twins Susan and Sharon. separated at birth and reunited by chance at summer camp. It was a technical and emotional challenge unlike anything attempted before by someone her age. Yet Hayley handled it with astonishing grace, switching effortlessly between personalities, expressions, and emotional tones. The film became a sensation, and so did she. Audiences adored the twins' clever antics, but more than that, they were captivated by the depth of Hayley's performance. She wasn't just cute, she was remarkably skilled. It was on the set of The Parent Trap that she met Maureen O'Hara, the fiery Irish star who played her on-screen mother. At the time, Hayley was only 14, still shy, still finding her footing in Hollywood. O'Hara, by contrast, was already an icon known for her commanding beauty, fiery red hair, and strong will that defied the male-dominated film industry. She had already starred in classics like The Quiet Man and How Green Was My Valley, holding her own alongside some of Hollywood's most powerful leading men, including John Wayne. Maureen was a force of nature, Hayley recalled in an interview. She was strong, direct, and utterly professional. But beneath that formidable exterior was a woman with great warmth and a deep sense of compassion. At first, young Hayley found her intimidating. O'Hara had a commanding presence that filled any room she entered. Her voice carried an unmistakable Irish lilt that could soften hearts or silence a crowd. "I was terribly shy at that age," Hayley admitted. And here was this magnificent woman who seemed to know exactly who she was and what she wanted. "I didn't know whether to be frightened or in awe." But O'Hara, despite her reputation for toughness, quickly revealed another side. She noticed the young actress's nervousness and, in her own quiet way, began to guide her. She never coddled or patronized, that wasn't her style, but she would offer advice between takes. Subtle lessons wrapped in conversation. She once told me, Hayley remembered, "You have to know who you are before the world tells you who to be." I didn't understand it then, but it stayed with me my whole life. Their relationship evolved from respect to friendship as filming continued. O'Hara expected everyone, even a teenager, to show up prepared, to give their best, and to treat the work with seriousness. She didn't believe in half measures, Hayley said. If you were on that set, you were there to work, and to work well. That discipline was something Hayley took to heart, shaping her approach to every role that followed. Off-screen, Maureen O'Hara was surprisingly private. She didn't gossip, didn't waste time with Hollywood nonsense. But when she chose to open up, she did so with honesty and humor. Hayley remembered the laughter most of all. How O'Hara would tell stories from her early days in Ireland or about her adventures with John Wayne while filming in the wild landscapes of the American West. She could make the whole crew laugh, Hayley said fondly. She had a twinkle in her eye that reminded you she wasn't nearly as stern as people thought. Over time, Hayley came to see O'Hara as more than a co-star. She became a mentor, a living example of how to survive in a world that often demanded women be smaller, quieter, more accommodating. O'Hara was none of those things. She had to fight twice as hard for the respect that men received automatically, Hayley reflected. People mistook her strength for arrogance, but it was survival. She demanded fairness and dignity, and I admired her deeply for that. Years later, as Hayley navigated her own challenges, the pressure of fame, the loss of privacy, the struggle to transition from child star to adult actress, she would find herself returning to those lessons. She learned that kindness and strength were not opposites, that one could be gentle yet firm, compassionate yet unyielding. She showed me that you can be kind without being weak and firm without being cruel, Hayley said. That balance is rare, but Maureen had it. As life carried Hayley through the decades, she found love, heartbreak, and reinvention. Her marriage to film director Roy Bolting had once made headlines because of their 33-year age difference. But it also brought her a son, Crispian, who grew to be a talented musician and lead singer of the British band Kula Shaker. Later, she had another son, Jason, with actor Lee Lawson. And though their relationship ended, their mutual respect endured. In her later years, she found lasting happiness with actor and writer Fergus Bamji. A love rooted in shared creativity and companionship rather than glamour. Yet through every stage of her life, the lessons she learned from Maureen O'Hara stayed with her. They were not lessons written in scripts or carved in awards. They were the quiet, enduring truths passed from one artist to another. O'Hara had shown her what it meant to stand tall in an industry that often tried to shrink women into simplicity. She had modeled grace under fire, humor under pressure, and strength without cruelty. When Maureen O'Hara passed away in 2015, Hayley felt the loss deeply. "It was like losing a piece of old Hollywood," she said softly. "The kind of grace and strength that doesn't exist anymore." Watching The Parent Trap now brings a flood of memories, not just of her own youthful innocence, but of the woman who had helped shape her into the actress and person she became. "I can still see her smile before a difficult scene," Hayley reminisced. "She'd put her hand on my shoulder and say, 'You've got this, darling.' Those moments, small yet unforgettable, have stayed with her for a lifetime. They are reminders of the women who came before her, who made it possible for younger actresses to step into the light with confidence and pride." "Maureen wasn't just my co-star," Hayley concluded. "She was my mentor, my protector, and my friend. Working with her was one of the greatest gifts of my life." Now, decades later, as she looks back across the long road of her career, from the bright lights of Disney's golden era to the quiet satisfaction of her later years, Hayley Mills carries the spirit of that fiery Irishwoman with her. The laughter, the lessons, and the strength they shared remain alive in her memories. And though time has softened the edges of fame, the truth endures. Two women, generations apart, met on a film set and left a mark on each other that would never fade.